So our speaker today, Doug Peters, and he's really a very well-known historian. In fact, in his own right, he's a scholar that understands many of these subjects. Everyone that's listened to him speak before has certainly enjoyed him. Doug was born and grew up in the Lehigh Valley. His early years in Allentown introduced him to the Lehigh Valley Transit Company, and a lifelong interest in trolleys came out of that, and rail transportation. And Doug really, he delves into it. He graduated from Emmaus High School and then Drexel University, where he earned a chemical engineering degree, and was introduced to the Philadelphia area trolleys, including the Red Arrow lines. If you have a trolley question later on in the program, I'm sure he'll answer that. But then he was employed for 36 years at Western Electric, AT&T Lucent Technologies in Allentown, retiring in 2000 as a member of the technical staff. From 1989 until 1993, Doug and Dave Biles hosted the WLVT TV channel 39 First Monday feature, Looking Back with Doug and Dave. You got to get that back on the air. Looking Back with Doug and Dave, that's a really good time. Maybe you can get it nationally syndicated, which showed old photos of transit in the Lehigh Valley. He's authored 3 Morning Sun books, which are excellent books that everyone who studies this subject usually wants to have. Lehigh Valley Transit in Color, Trackside Around the Lehigh River Valley with Randolph Culp, and then the Red Arrow Lines in Color. And Doug is really out there doing it. He's really on the front lines of history. He continues to enjoy photographing trolleys, trains, buses, and he has pursued a photographic history of the Lehigh and Northern Transportation Authority since its inception back in 1972. And it's really crazy to think 1972 was like 50 years ago. I'll tell you one thing, when time does go that fast, let's give Doug Peters a real nice round of applause. And thank you for being with us, Doug. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you for having me here today. My question is, how many people here actually worked at the Western Electric plant? Okay, we have some. It's hard to believe that it's been 75 years since the plant was open on Union Boulevard. Okay, all the photos that you'll see here were from the Western Electric archives and from my personal collection. It's 75 years, lots of things have changed. Let's look at some of the changes that occurred in our surroundings. Here's a picture that was taken off the 8th Street Bridge. At that time, in the earlier days, there were a lot of old homes and factories down along Lawrence Street. The more recent picture shows, how the background has really changed in the skyline of Allentown as well. This is Linden Street at Church. The building that you see in the 1964 picture was the original Allentown City Hall. And that was taken down soon after that picture was taken. And the newer picture shows a vacant lot there. And looming in the background, we see the corporate plaza, which disappeared after the sinkhole in 1994. And where that is where part of the hockey arena is today. Hamilton Street at 9th. The older picture shows the Hess Brothers store, which was Allentown's major department store. The house that's shown on the right of that picture was the Martin Mansion. In 1972-73, the city decided to convert Hamilton Street into what they called Hamilton Mall. They narrowed down the street and put up canopies. And this was an effort to try to compete with the shopping malls around the area. And as we know, that experiment failed. And today the canopies are gone, and I believe most of the trees in that are gone as well. Hamilton Street, looking east at Penn. This area used to contain a lot of the old homes and mansions of the area. They were later torn down. If you go there today and look on that more recent picture, to the left is where the City Hall is, and on the right is the Hamilton Plaza. And in the distance on the older picture, you can see the Lehigh Valley Railroad Station, which was taken down back in the early 1960s. Public transit has gone from the Lehigh Valley Transit Company to Lanta, which operates the system today. And as we pointed out, Lanta now is 50 years old itself. Some areas really changed drastically. Here's a picture in Bethlehem showing a trolley alongside Newton Avenue, which was a dirt road, and Newton Avenue later became Stefco Boulevard, which you see in the adjoining picture. Today, that's a big wide street going through a commercial area. And another area that we've really developed rapidly from what it had been is MacArthur Road, or the North 7th Street extension. Originally, it was a 2-lane concrete road just running through farmland. Today, as we know, it's a big 6-lane road running through a commercial district. And as this area grew, the downtown area declined. Some things remained the same. Although the trolley tracks are long gone, the PP&L building still stands today and is Allentown skyscraper and also the tallest building in the Lehigh Valley. This is the way the PP&L building looked at night back in the 40s and 50s. The 8th Street Bridge, which was constructed in 1913 for trolley cars, is still a vital link between downtown Allentown and the south side. Another thing that's still the same is the Soldier and Sailors Monument at Center Square, Allentown. Although, if you go there today, on 3 of the corners, the buildings that are there are no longer there. The only building that's still the same is the Merchants Bank building. What was downtown Allentown like back in the late 40s, early 50s? Well, it was the shopping and commercial district of the Lehigh Valley. This is a view looking east on Hamilton Street from Center Square. We see another one of Allentown's department stores, H. Lane Company. And also, the Lehigh Valley Transit Company ran trolley cars throughout the Lehigh Valley. Buses were beginning to take over at this time. In fact, most of the buses that the Lehigh Valley Transit Company had were Mack buses, which were built right here in Allentown. Steam trains still roam the rails in the Lehigh Valley. This is a Jersey Central train that's leaving the Allentown station for a trip to the New York City area. And if you just went up the street from that station, you could come to the Lehigh Valley Railroad Station, where you could board another passenger train to take you to the New York area. We also had an airport, unlike the airport that we have today. Originally it was called the Allentown Bethlehem Airport. Today it's Lehigh Valley International Airport. Let's get back to our main subject here, Western Electric, which was the manufacturing and supply unit of the Bell system. This shows the relationship of the Bell system. AT&T is the parent company, and AT&T owned the Bell operating companies and also Western Electric. And Western Electric, which was the supply unit of the Bell system, jointly owned the Bell Telephone Labs with AT&T. The big news on October 11th, 1945 was that Western Electric was going to build a new electronics plant in Allentown. At this time, the electronics plant was located in Manhattan on Hudson Street. And there were a number of reasons why they wanted to build a new plant. One was that the fact that The increase in demand for vacuum tubes necessitated more manufacturing space. And another factor was that because the vacuum tubes are becoming more intricate, they needed a cleaner environment to manufacture them. And also the third reason was that a tank of hydrogen gas had exploded and blew out the windows in the Hudson Street shops. The New York City Fire Department was not very happy about this and told Western Electric that they either had to stop using hydrogen gas or leave. So we left. This was an artist's conception of the way that the Allentown electronics shop would look. The building, the small building in the front was the office building, building 20. The bigger building is the manufacturing building, building 30. And the building behind it was the powerhouse, building 40. And again, the building was going to be made to manufacture vacuum tubes. The site chosen was along Union Boulevard, and it was basically farmland. There were a number of reasons why Allentown was chosen. One of the reasons was that it was nearby to a lot of colleges and universities for technological support. Another reason was that the planners here wanted to incorporate a branch Bell Laboratories with the manufacturing facility. And the main Bell Labs were located in nearby New Jersey. And another reason was that there was a great supply of skilled labor in the Lehigh Valley, especially women who they felt had the dexterity to assemble the vacuum tubes. And a lot of the women had been employed in the garment industry, which was rapidly declining at this time. This is Union Boulevard. There's the Lehigh and New England Railroad and Dauphin Street, normally called Canal Road. This was all farmland except for one building. There was a roadside restaurant called the Blue Pig. Here we see the Blue Pig being dismantled in January of 1946, ahead of the groundbreaking ceremony which would take place for the new facility on February 22nd, 1947. Or, excuse me, 1946. In the meantime, it was decided to manufacture some of the products from Hudson Street at another site until the new facility could be built. And the site chosen for that was the Balliet Cigar Box Company on North Franklin Street in Allentown. Production started here in June of 1946 and ended in 1949. This particular building stood for many years until within the last 5 years it caught on fire and it was demolished. During 1946, construction took place on the new plant. Here's the foundation going up for the manufacturing building, building 30. And in the background you can see the PP&L building. This shows the construction inside the building, lots of steel, lots of lumber. By early 1947, the office building was basically constructed. You can see there's work here being done on the lobby. In September of 1947, Fred Hansen was appointed as the plant manager, and he served in this position until November of 1963, longer than any other person. In November of 1947, metal piece parts started being manufactured in the new facility. An important discovery was made just about a month later on December 23rd, 1947, and this was to impact all of our lives and also change the future direction of the Allentown plant, the invention of the transistor. Here we see the three inventors of the transistor: Walter Bertin, John Bardeen, and William Shockley. The 3 Bell Lab scientists later won a Nobel Physics Prize in 1956. This shows the original office building 20 and the original lobby as it looked in early 1948. And at this time, we were called the Allentown plant of Western Electric. It was no longer the Allentown Electronics Shop. In order to show off the new building, an open house was held in October of 1948. This is the lobby, the original lobby in Building 20. The second floor of Building 20 had the engineering offices. And as you can see from one end of the building to the other. At this time, there were no cubicles to hide in. The cafeteria was located on the northwest corner of Building 30, the manufacturing building. And this was designed to accommodate 575 people. Employment continued to increase. This is the employment office that was located on the second floor of Building 20. In the basement of Building 30 was the metal piece part shop. On the main floor of Building 30 were located the women in white, or the Snow Whites, assembling the vacuum tubes. The reason that the white smocks were worn was for cleanliness. But again, you can see from one end of the building to the other. An early product at Allentown were miniature lamps, which were used in the telephone switchboards. In 1949, Western Electric received the National Safety Award. And here we see some of the employees outside for the presentation of the award. Note the flash lettering on the facade, Allentown plant. These are some of the various vacuum tubes that were made at Allentown over the years. On October 1st, 1951, we put into operation the world's first transistor production line. It was done here at Allentown. That's really an important event. As it says here, the transistor revolutionized the communications world in our time. So I guess that's sort of an understatement. I mean, it really revolutionized more than just the communications world. Well, 1953 rolls around, and on June 8th, 1953, the Lehigh Valley Transit Company converted the last trolley line to bus operation. And here we see car 912 decorated for the last run to Bethlehem and back. Also in this picture, we note the third department store in Allentown, Zollinger Harnett. The Allentown Club was formed to provide social events for the employees and their families. And one of the annual events was the Miss Allentown Club. This particular picture was taken at Dorney Park's Castle Gardens back around 1950. The company was also very much involved with safety and promoted safety both on and off the job. This safety campaign was for road safety. Notice all the vintage automobiles here in the parking lot, and also the Howard Johnson's Lodge, which was still in business at the corner of Union Boulevard and Fenwick Streets. As the 1950s progressed, more and more floor space was required for both the office area and the manufacturing. So on June 24th, 1955, there was a groundbreaking ceremony for the expansion. This was Building 21, which was built next to Building 20, the original building, to continue the office area. This is taken around 1957. We see that they're working on the new lobby Here's the original lobby, and notice the Western Electric flash lettering that was put on the facade. And again, I know there's a lot of people who would like to have some of these automobiles today. This is an aerial view of what the plant looked like after that expansion. This is the new building 21 and the new lobby, and this is the new manufacturing building, building 31. Notice the Boulevard Drive-In was still here. And up here is the Howard Johnson Lodge. These were some of the discrete transistors that were made at Allentown over the years. New products were continually introduced into Allentown. This was the thin film production, the thin film development line that was located on the main floor of Building 30. Early thin film substrates comprised of high stability tantalum nitride resistors on glass substrates. Another product were sealed contacts, which were manufactured on the main floor of Building 31. In order to provide quality products, a diagnostic laboratory was established. And here we see a young engineer examining a sample on a carbon arc metallograph. The carbon arc metallograph is long gone, but the young engineer is still with us, except he's a lot older. This was the club room, and it was located under the patio area between buildings 31 and 21. The engineers are assembled here for a program for Engineers Week, which is always held every February of each year. Notice the attire. All the people have white shirts, ties, and dark trousers. That was the attire at that time. Well, there were a few people who didn't comply with that. Another product were the ferrite sheets. These ferrite sheets were grouped together and wires were wound through the holes to form a memory module. And this was the ferrite wiring memory area. It's also in Building 30. Introduction to the laser at Allentown. This was an early use of the laser in an industrial area. It was used to accurately separate thin film circuits on a ceramic substrate. Up until this time, the laser was primarily a novelty. It wasn't really used in manufacturing. In 1970, the Western Electric name and Bell logo got a new image. In June of 1971, an open house was held again. And here we see the general manager at that time, Don Wilkes, sampling the refreshments. During the 1960s, the plant was further expanded. In 1962, there was Building 22 was attached to Building 21. And then in 1969, Building 23 was built, and then Building 24 on this end. Building 23 was primarily used by the Bell Laboratories. This is the outside of the plant as it looked in the early 1970s. The flash lettering was still here. In 1972, the last miniature tubes were made, and then in 1973, the last metal piece parts were manufactured, and these were some of the employees in the shop for the metal piece parts. Before every home had one or two automobiles, a lot of employees still use public transportation to go to and from work. For many years, the Lehigh Valley Transit Company and Atlanta operated special runs just for the employees of Western Electric. This particular bus is the type that replaced the trolley cars back in 1953, and it was manufactured by General Motors. Well, today General Motors no longer manufactures buses. As I said, a lot of things have changed in the last 75 years. Here we see some of the products that were made in Allentown during the 1970s. A lot of thin film products, the ferrite memory module, integrated circuit, beam-leaded integrated circuits. The manufacture of those started around 1965. And we still made the sealed contacts, and we still made discrete transistors. Here's a view of the plant showing building 60 in the background here. That was opened in 1964 as the merchandise building. The drive-in theater was still in business, but the credit union hadn't been built yet. The new Western Electric lettering and Bell logo were applied to Building 24. Thin film occupied a lot of floor space at Allentown in the 1980s. Here we see the thin film pattern generation line on the main floor of Building 31. The thin film hybrid integrated circuit area occupied the main floor of Building 30. In the 1980s, there was an increased demand for silicon wafers, so a new building was built, Building 61, next to Building 60, and this was used for the manufacture of the silicon ingots and the silicon wafers. In 1983, a state-of-the-art clean room was built on the main floor of Building 31, MOS 5, and this clean room was in existence until all the production was shut down later in 2003. In 1984, the Bell system was split up. AT&T divested itself of the Bell operating companies, and it changed the name of Western Electric to AT&T Technologies and acquired a new logo because the existing Bell logo was retained by the operating companies. Silicon production increased even more, and more space was needed, so an addition was put on to Building 60 just for silicon. So this whole area became a silicon manufacturing area. And in the background here we see another building, Building 32, which was built back around 1982, and it later housed the thin film assembly and test area. This shows you the size of a single crystal silicon ingot. In June of 1991, all thin film manufacturing ceased at Allentown, and then in 1974, the discrete transistors were last manufactured. So now the Allentown facility became an entire semiconductor plant. If you look here now the credit union was built and the drive-in theater is gone. In 1995, it was announced that AT&T was going to spin off the manufacturing companies to a new company which would become known as Lucent Technologies. It became an independent company in October of 1996. And the lettering and the logo on the lobby was changed to reflect that change. The lobby was also redone, and this is the way the lobby looked when Lucent first took over. This was the last slide in my original presentation that I did back in 1997 for the 50th anniversary. At that time, I said, hopefully the next 50 years will be as prosperous and exciting as the last 50 years were. Well, I guess the future years we could say were certainly exciting, but they were not prosperous at all, as we'll see here in a few minutes. One of the events that was taken for the 50th anniversary was an open house. My final years were spent in the product analysis lab. The product analysis lab received defective devices and attempted to figure out why the products were defective. So we used optical microscopes, electron microscopes, and other sophisticated equipment to try to understand why that product failed. In late 2000, it was announced that there was another spin-off. Lucent was now going to spin us off as a gear. Then the bad news started. In June of 2001, it was announced that there would be massive layoffs. There was some good news in the beginning of 2002. It looked like the plan was to close the Reading plant and the Bridesville operation and move those operations to Allentown. So that would keep manufacturing here in Allentown. In May of 2002, the new headquarters building was open. This is the green building. It's located to the north of the original buildings up near Route 22. Then more bad news hit, that Agir was going to slash more jobs and also stop all the local manufacturing. In June of 2003, the last chips were manufactured, and the people, were laid off at that time. 2004, there was a proposal to build a new baseball stadium on some of the Agir property. Also in 2004, the building 60 and 61, the Silicon buildings, were demolished, as well as building 32. And the next year, 2005, we saw the demise of building 30 and 31. And what replaced building 30 and 31 was a parking lot. There was a marker that had existed here behind building 20 to commemorate the transistor and its association with Allentown. I'm not exactly sure what happened to that marker. It sort of disappeared. In the meantime, LSI Logics, bought Agir. So now we see their name at the headquarters building. And the baseball stadium was built in the back on the property that was near where building 32 had been. And we're looking across the parking lot, which at one time was the site of the building 30 and 31. In late 2013, it was announced another buyout. This time, LSI was going to be bought out by Avago Technologies. So you can see we went from Western Electric, AT&T, Lucent, Agir, now LSI, and now Avago. In early 2014, the Executive Education Academy Charter School got permission to use the building for their charter school. There were also other tenants at the former office building. In building 24, the Pennsylvania Career Link had space for their operation. And here we see one of the Atlanta buses that had been wrapped to advertise that company. Eventually, the charter school bought the property, and now we see their name on the facade. And if you go in the lobby today, this is what you would see. This was the former lobby of Western Electric, now the lobby for the charter school. And that's the story.